If you're struggling to get your first Airbnb listed because you can't get an owner to say yes to allow you to Airbnb their property, then this video is going to be for you. Maybe you're a professional, you're an entrepreneur, and you're like, look, I can do more. I want to build an empire of Airbnbs, but I can't even get past the first step of getting this landlord to agree to let me Airbnb their property. Stay with me because I'm going to give you the 7 best steps to basically conquer that you can get started with right away so that you can get a landlord to basically eat out of your hand to work with you. The very first step is going to be, you got to learn sales and negotiation. Guys, trying to get a landlord to convince them to go with you versus a traditional tenant is very difficult. It's something they're not used to. It's something that's out of the box. And so you got to convince them, you got to influence them that if you Airbnb their property, it is going to be a much better decision than just taking a regular tenant, which is traditional for renters, and putting them in there and forgetting about them for a year. So you got to get good at negotiating. You got to get good at sales. What I would recommend is probably go to Sell or Be Sold, right? Grant Cardone put a great book out called Sell or Be Sold. It's going to help you tremendously. Get the audio, get the hardcover book, get the softcover book, and listen to that book. Read that book. It will help you tremendously learn how to talk to people and get them to influence to what you want them to do. Step number 2, and it's never pitch a landlord Airbnb on the first call. If you pitch Airbnb on the very first call, you are very likely to get a no, okay? Why do we not pitch Airbnb on the front end? Because Airbnb is the #1 short-term rental platform, but it's also all over CBS, ABC, NBC, all over the news, where people are partying, trashing places, people are dying, right? Kid got sick and died, he got fentanyl underneath the sink, God forbid, geez. And so it made the public eye as something that is not good. Although it's completely the best platform, the news made it look bad. And so if you pitch it on the front end, instead of pitching it as a Airbnb, pitch it as a corporate leasing company. Travel nurses, doctors, chiropractors, business professionals, CEOs, sometimes they stay for 2 to 3 days, sometimes they stay for 2 to 3 months. Now, what I did psychologically is I told that homeowner that sometimes they stay for 2 to 3 days and sometimes 2 to 3 months. So what I just told them is that we're going to do short-term out of their property, but also maybe a mid-term renter as well. Okay? Now, will they later on sign a document that says, hey, listen, you can, Airbnb, vrbo, bookings.com, my property? Yes. But not on the very first call. Always pitch it as corporate leasing. And that is going to bring me into step number 3, and that is always ask for a concession of 2 years lease. The reason for it is because if you are going to furnish the property in Airbnb, you're not always profitable the first few months, potentially, because you got to pay back the furniture expense. And what happens is if you get a 1-year lease and they kick you out after that first year, you're not really starting to make and get humping right before you have to be kicked out of the place, unless they give you an option to renew. But I always go for a 2 or a 3-year lease. If the numbers make sense, you'd want to stay forever. So always try to negotiate a longer lease than a shorter lease. Step number 4, and that is always ask for a rent concession. And here's what I do. Mr. Landlord, I love your property. Okay, we're looking to put a 2-year lease on the property just to show you we're super serious. Now, what I would like to do today is put down a deposit of XYZ, whatever the deposit is. Okay, we have to go in there. We have some things that we have to do inside the property. We have to get our decor team. We've got to get some furniture. We've got to put the key lock on the front door. We've got to put cameras on it. And so we're going to need a little bit of time to actually get into the property prior to our first month of rent. So what I would ask you for this, if I sign a 2-year, 3-year lease today, would you give us the next 4 weeks where we can just get into the property? We're not going to live there, but we just need a few weeks to get into the property so that we can actually secure the property and get the stuff we need to do for our clients before the first month rent is due. See how I just did that? This video is so valuable, and if you've gotten value already, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel right now because I give you all real stuff, no fluff. This is all the real stuff that you need in order of what I would do. Okay, step number 5, and thank you guys for subscribing. Step number 5, and that is the psychology of a homeowner. I've been a homeowner many times over, and I can tell you this is what landlords care about. 2 things. They care about, number 1, are you going to take care of their asset? If they feel like their asset is going to get destroyed, they will never let you Airbnb their property. That's number one, okay? This is something they're keeping for retirement. And if they feel like it's an Airbnb and you're gonna trash the place, you can forget it. Number two, are you going to make your payments on time? That's the only two things that landlords care about, taking care of their asset and payments on time. So think about this for a minute from the psychology. When we hit these in a second, when I give you the audio of how we solve these two problems, now you can see why landlords will eat out of your hand, because we solved those two problems that they have in their mind and concerns they're going to be taken away. It's like this, for example. I say you're applying for a credit card. And you apply for a credit card, and on the application you put, I live with my mom in the basement, I'm unemployed, I make $8,000 a year, and don't know when I'm going back to work. Would you likely get a very high credit limit? No or no? It's the same thing here, right? You got to pretend in a good way, and sometimes in the beginning, because you don't have a bunch of property, you got to fake it till you make it, and you got to have confidence, which comes down to sales and negotiation. Not saying to lie, I'm saying confidence. You got to have confidence. Landlords will give you a shot if you have confidence, but if you're they're not going to do it, okay? And that leads me to step number 6. Once the landlord says, great, we can put together a deal, you need to follow up. Follow up. You don't know how many students I have where they're like, hey, we just got this deal put together and I haven't heard from the landlord. The landlord is not going to call you. They are very lackadaisical these days. They don't care. They're not going to call you. You have to call them. Call them, follow up, text, email. Where are we at with the lease? What's going on? Where are we at? Like, follow up. The fortune is in the follow up. That's why that saying was made, because most people do not follow up. And so if you don't follow up, guess what? You're going to be shit out of luck, because they're not going to follow up with you. They're going to find a traditional tenant. Remember, at that moment, you've convinced them to do something that is outside of their box. And when it's outside their box, because they can go with a traditional tenant, if you don't continue to follow up, they're just going to rent the place to somebody else. Okay? And that leads me to step number 7, and the most important one. And that is this. If you guys don't have credibility, you have no Airbnbs, you have no references, you have no background, maybe your credit's not good, maybe you're working a lot of hours and you're like, I don't have the time, I don't have the background right now, I'm brand new in this. Investor Mike's got you. I'm the only person on the planet that is willing to sell my time so that you can win. What I mean by that is this. There's not a single person right now that is willing to do what I'm about to tell you. So pay attention. If you need help with any of what I just told you, in the beginning, so you can learn, I will jump on a 3-way call with you. I will use my background, my Airbnbs, my references, my website, my credit, my business credit, whatever we need, negotiation skills, to get you 4 weeks of free rent, potentially 8 weeks of free rent. Close the deal for you. Make sure it's on my credibility and not yours, but the best part is this. I don't want a single penny. For my students, I do this for them. And there's not a person on this planet that could say what I just told you. So while the majority of people that get into Airbnb fail in their first year, I can tell you this, my students are crushing it. Because I'm helping them, and they have the #1 coach in America by their side every step of the way, holding their hand. So you're not wondering, where do I go? What's my next step? What should I? That doesn't happen with me. Okay? You'll have access to me 24/7, and there are no stupid questions. I want you to ask. And then you'll have me on a call with you, negotiating the deal for you, getting the free rent based on my credibility, and then I hand it off to you like a football. In other words, it's going in your name, not mine. I don't want a single penny or a split deal from that. That's just something I do with my students. So you guys got to get good sales and negotiation. Okay, sell or be sold, get the book. Get the audio, get the book. Number 2, you got to never pitch landlords up front by saying, hey, I want to Airbnb your property. Number 3, understand that you got to ask for at least 4 weeks of free rent. Number 4, go with a 2-year lease, not a 1-year lease. Try to go to 2 or 3-year lease. Number 5, remember what landlords care about: keeping their property in immaculate for sale condition, and making sure that their payments are going to be made on time. So if you tell a landlord, listen, I'm going to keep your property in for sale condition. In fact, it'll be in better condition when I leave than it is right now. You just solved their biggest problem. The property stays in immaculate condition. Now you have confidence, you're on the sales call, you're crushing it, and you're getting a landlord to give you 4 to 8 weeks of free rent with a 2-year lease. And you're going to follow up with them, follow up until they sign that lease. And lastly, if you need help with all this, what I want you to do is I want you to text me at 904-864-8828. 904-864-8828. Text me the word Airbnb, and I'll personally reach out to you and say, hey, let's work together. My name is Investor Mike. I love every one of you guys. Thank you for being here. This is how you're going to get a yes and get your first property in under 30 days by following my blueprint. Let's roll.